friends, I'm trying out a new camera angle today. Hopefully my goats will not mess with it when it's up a little bit higher. So today I want to do part 2 of my Raising Kids video series, and I'm going to talk about integrating kids into the herd and getting them out on the land. And I did not bring my notebook with me today, so I don't have any notes. If you noticed in my last video, my goats were really excited about attempting to eat my notebook, so I thought I would try to wing it today. I touched on this in my last video, but it's very important in this process to take the personalities and the environment of your herd into consideration when you're making these decisions. And I'm just going to walk you through a couple of things that I do, some things that I've learned, and some things that you will want to consider when deciding on Cleo. Don't mess with the camera. Stop. Good girl. Hey, don't do it. Some things that you will want to consider when going through this whole process. I love you both. You're so sweet. Hi, baby. You want to come sit on my lap? I'm putting Rosie on my lap because she's kind of demanding, and I'm trying to teach her to be calm. And putting her on my lap gives her the attention that she's looking for, but it also kind of forces her to be calm and to interact on my terms, not hers. So it's helpful for teaching her that. Stay back. Also, she's just cute. Look at how cute you are. There goes my hat. Thanks, Butte. Since I live in Missouri and we have very cold winters, my favorite time to kid is April and May, because usually the weather is not too horribly cold at that time, but we also haven't started getting into the really hot season yet either, and the flies usually aren't too terrible in April and May. So depending on your climate and your circumstances, you may want to kid at a different time, but the reason I'm going into this is because if you live in a very cold environment and you're kidding in the winter time, you will want to have Cleo. No, she's so jealous. You will want to have a really good kidding area set up where you can keep your kids nice and warm, and you can keep them from getting chilled, especially when they're newborns and they're still wet. When they're still wet, they can get frostbite, and they can get so chilled that they will not be able to eat and digest their food properly. So that's very important. I can be a little bit more relaxed because usually I don't have kids being born at a really cold season, and so I actually have a fairly minimal goat setup. I have one stall in the barn, and then I have various different shelters set up outside in the goat pen that the goats can get into and use. I usually leave my does with the herd unless the weather is really bad and I have to be gone for a while and I can't keep an eye on them, or if it's a cold, wet, nasty night, or there's some other consideration going on that makes it unwise for them to potentially be kidding out in the pen with the rest of the goats. I always have due dates for my does, so I pen breed. No, Sunday, don't be mean. Be nice to the baby. Good girl. I pen breed, so I know what day my doe is bred, and so I have a due date for her. No, Sunday. No. So what you're seeing here is babies learning how to be part of the herd and being taught their boundaries. However, I don't like them fighting when they're all close to me because I can get hit by a horn or something like that. So I try to discourage the bossing around. Typically, mini does will isolate themselves when they're getting close to going into labor. In fact, that is something that you can look for that is a sign that your doe is getting close to delivery. And so they will often, even if they're out in the pen, they will go off in a corner by themselves to have their kids. I really don't have any issue with them kidding outside as long as the weather isn't terrible. I've had several times where they've either kidded outside or started to kid outside, and I just kind of let it happen, and then I moved them into the stall when they were done. The reason I like having them inside is because I have electricity in there, and so if it's nighttime, you can turn on a light. If you have a cold kid that you need to warm up, you can turn on a heat lamp or a blow dryer to help them dry off quickly, and so it's just really convenient for those reasons. But I typically like to leave the doe with the herd as long as possible because she will be more active and move around more, and that's just better for her overall health, better for her helping get the kids worked into position so that they're ready to be born and they're properly positioned. And so I just like to make sure they get as much exercise and movement as possible right up until they're ready to kid. What happens next is going to depend a whole lot on your setup, your goats, and the weather. So I'm just going to give you some basic goals here. Some of the things that you want to achieve: you want the doe and kids to bond well. You want her to be nursing them. You want her to know that they're her kids. You want her to be taking care of them. You obviously don't want the kids getting chilled, or in hot weather they can actually overheat as well, and that's also dangerous. So you want to be keeping an eye on that. You want everything to be as calm and peaceful as possible. Obviously a stressed out doe is not going to be taking good care of her kids. And she's also, her immune system's going to be down, and she's not going to heal up as well after the birth and all of those things. So you just want everybody just to be calm, happy, peaceful, restful. Some does are going to be happiest all by themselves. They're going to want to be away from the rest of the herd for several days and just bond with their kids and, enjoy those first few days of being a mom. Other does, especially young does, I have seen cases where they get very anxious because they don't know what's going on, and they don't like being alone because it's very scary for them. And so in that instance, you may actually want them to be integrated with the rest of the herd, or if that doesn't seem like a good idea, you may want them to at least have another older and gentle goat that they can hang out with or be close to if you have them separated by a fence, so that they can get some reassurance and some support there, and they won't feel quite so lonely. Typically, newborn goat kids don't do a whole lot. They eat and sleep, and that's about it for the first several days. And so, you want to wear my hat? There you go. So, you look beautiful, Sunday. You're beautiful. So they will just kind of hang out with mom, and they don't do a whole lot. And so that's really the most crucial time to make sure that they're warm, dry, clean, and that they're eating and bonding well with their mom. If you have goats, you probably know about goat pecking order and the fact that they enforce that fairly violently oftentimes. And so you don't want a pecking order war happening on top of newborn goat kids, because oftentimes they just can't move fast enough to get out of the way. You also don't want a goat that's lower on the pecking order and has just had kids getting run out of the kidding stall or shed, or my goodness, you don't want her getting run out of the kidding stall or shed or wherever it is that she is set up to take care of her kids, and being forced out and not being comfortable coming back in because there's a more dominant goat guarding that space. Another thing that can happen is if your more dominant goat is in that shed or shelter, they can stand at the doorway and they will not let anybody come in where their kids are. And so I think it's very important to have some sort of a system, whether you do stalls or set up extra sheds outside. I use IBC totes. They work really well for this kind of scenario, where all of your goats can get into a shelter that is not the shelter that's being used by the doe and the new kids, so that nobody gets left out in the rain or the cold or whatever. I think it's definitely very doable for a lot of people to just have their does kid with the herd and hang out with the herd and not have any issues. And if you decide to try that method, that's awesome. But I would say be prepared to separate them if you see any sort of aggressive behavior. So be prepared to adjust your setup. Have a plan in place. Have all the infrastructure set up that you would need to be able to move the doe and the new kids if you see any indications that there's aggression or some sort of an issue happening there that's detrimental to them. Things that you want to look for are, guarding the space. Make sure everybody can get into shelter. Nobody's getting left outside. Make sure the doe's not being isolated from her kids. Make sure she's not upset and hollering and stressed out. Make sure the kids are obviously safe. They're not getting trampled. They're not getting attacked by another goat. Something else that can happen, I've never had it happen in my herd, but you can actually have does that will, do you like wearing my hat? You like it? You want to keep wearing it? Do you feel cool in my hat? Yeah? Just move your head. You're squishing me. As you can actually have does that will steal another goat's kids. And I've never had that occur, but that is also something that you might want to watch out for if you have a herd that, has multiple does in it. Typically, if I'm separating a doe and her kids, I will keep them separated for maybe 3 to 5 days. And once the kids are on their feet and they're moving around better, and they're not just sleepy little newborn babies, I will integrate them with the rest of the herd. And I want to make sure that I'm always there for that integration, and that some fighting is normal. Some pushing around and bossing is totally normal. I don't worry about that. Things that I do watch for are excessive aggression, and I watch for goats that will attack the kids without any provocation, or attack the mom or the kids and just keep going at them and pushing them like into a corner or into a fence where they can't escape, and not letting them get away. In order to learn their place in the pecking order, goat kids have to be pushed around by the adult goats, and that's just a normal, natural thing that's going to happen. And so don't be shocked when you see that. However, there should not be anything happening that will actually injure the kids, and there should not be issues with the goats of the herd going out of their way to actually attack or be aggressive to the kids. If it's a lower ranking doe that has just had the kids, she may not feel like she can protect them against, the herd queen or whatever. So you got to really watch for that. Obviously, if it's your herd queen's kids, there probably isn't going to be anybody messing with those babies. She'll probably really be aggressive in defending them. I also wanted to add that the same rules apply when you're integrating bottle babies in with the herd. I did that last year. I raised 4 bottle kids and I integrated them with the herd. And I was a little extra careful because obviously they did not have a mom taking care of them and watching out for them. So I actually created a creep area. So it was a small area that they could get in and out of, but that the entrance was too small for my adults to get in and out of. And they had a house in there. They had, I think I had water in there. They had hay in there that they could eat. So they were basically all set up that they had their own little spot that they could go into if they were getting picked on. and I really watched very, very closely. And I have to say, my girls have all been amazingly good with both the bottle kids and just with each other's kids as well. They're just pretty mellow. You know, I never saw anything that would make me worried that they were going to actually injure any of those babies. So now I want to talk a little bit about getting goat kids out on the land. A couple things that I have discovered that you really need to think about when you're getting them out on the land are predator issues, the ability of the kids to keep up with the herd, the risk of losing your kids in rough or brushy pastures where you don't have very high visibility. I have not had very many predator issues because hi baby, because I bring my goat kids home at night, and I bring my whole herd home at night, so they stay up close to the barn at night. So far that has been sufficient to discourage any predators that would go after my goat kids. But if you live in an area where predators are a really big issue, I would encourage you to look into getting some kind of a guard animal to go with your herd, because obviously when kids are so small, they're very vulnerable, and they're very much like deer, where they will often bed down and sleep, and their mom will go off and graze and then come back to them to feed them. So especially when their mother is not close, they are very, very vulnerable to attack. Again, goat kids, when they're little, they aren't going to be able to travel very far or very fast. They do mature very quickly, but that's just something you ought to keep in mind if your herd is traveling long distances through the day, that, you know, your kids may not always be able to keep up. And, you know, maybe the mom will stay behind and help take care of them, but that's just something you need to kind of observe and keep an eye on. An issue that I have had a couple times now is just with the terrain here on my property. It's very brushy, very thick, lots of ground cover, and you can lose goat kids out here very easily. And what has happened to me in the past is that when I go to bring my herd home at night, all of my adults will be waiting for me at the gate, and the kids will be bedded down somewhere sleeping, and nobody knows where they are. Well, their mom probably does, but so far at least I have not had a mom that has been able to put it together mentally to go and get her kids and bring them to the gate. I don't know why. They're all good moms. They take good care of their kids, but somehow that has not, they haven't connected those dots yet. So if you have a mom that will do that, awesome. Keep her. I don't, at least not yet. And so I have to really monitor that situation so I don't end up with goat kids being left out on the land somewhere and their mom being locked up at the barn and then cluing in, oh shoot, my babies aren't here, and then panicking and, you know, all that whole process. And so I try to only put kids out once they're big enough that I feel like they're going to keep up with the herd. And that really depends on the individual kids. I found somewhere between 10 days and 2 weeks is usually when they will start following the older goats around and keeping up with them and not just going and laying down and sleeping somewhere. But I would say, if this is a potential risk in your situation, give yourself some extra time when you go out to get your goats the first few evenings if you're bringing them home at night, so that you have time to go hunt around in the brush and find your babies if they aren't there. There's nothing worse than being out in the woods and it's getting dark and you have no idea where your goat kids are. So definitely keep that in mind. I use electric fences for my fencing, and that has worked really well with the babies because they start learning to respect the fence at a very young age. Obviously they watch the other herd members and they realize, oh, nobody's touching this fence, there's probably a reason why. And they also will get shocked by it a couple times and start to figure it out. The nice thing about dam raised kids is even if they escape from your fence, they're not going to run away because their mom is in the fence, and they're not going to want to go too far from her. So they're going to stick pretty close even if they get out. I use primarily smooth electric wire fencing, and so that fencing doesn't have a lot of give to it. And so I feel pretty comfortable that my goat kids are not going to get entangled in the fencing. However, I have used some polyrope fencing, and that has a lot more stretch. And so I have seen goat kids actually get like a leg through the fence and then get shocked several times and then, you know, be frantically trying to escape. I think that would also be a risk if you're using the electronet fencing, which I know a lot of people do use. And so I would say if you're using a fencing system like that, it would be really good to supervise your kid's introduction to that fence just to make sure that they don't get tangled up, or if they do, that you can step in quickly and fish them out again. Usually after a kid gets shocked a couple of times, they don't mess with that fence anymore and they're good, you know, unless they're especially dense. Because everything that they want and need is inside of the fence. They got their mom, they got their herd, they're good, you know, so they're happy there. Where are you going with my hat, Sunday? It's gone. One thing that is a bit of a challenge if you are moving your goats from pasture to pasture like I do every day, is that you will have to train your babies to keep up with the herd. And usually the first couple times out on the land, they are massively confused. They don't know where they're going. They don't know to follow the herd very well. And so, you know, sometimes they will just stand there and holler or head the wrong direction. That really stresses their mom out, obviously, because she's like, oh shoot, my friends are going this way, my kids are going that way, I don't know what to do. So just expect a lot of chaos and screaming and hollering the first few times you try to move your goats after you've integrated the kids and you're teaching them to go out on the land. However, I will say that they pick it up very quickly, and usually within a couple days they'll be leading the charge because they know where to go, and they're very proud to be doing big goat stuff with the big goats. So it's usually kind of chaotic the first few times. Make sure you give yourself a big time allowance. Do not, you know, try to move babies for the first time on a day when you've only got 10 minutes and then you have to be heading to town. Like, give yourself a big buffer so that you're not rushed, you're not impatient, you can take the time that you need to train them and teach them. If you have a smaller number of kids, you might be able to either pick them up under your arms or put them in a tote or a wheelbarrow or something and wheel them along so they're headed the right direction, and then obviously their mom's going to follow them. But you know, if you have a larger number of babies, you're going to be stuck, you know, going back and getting stragglers, and that's just what's going to happen most likely. I saw a really cool picture one time of somebody who was using it was either a donkey or a mule, and they basically had these compartmentalized saddlebags on it, and they were using it to haul, I think it was their lambs actually. So each lamb had their own little pouch, and they would just stick them in there, and then they could lead the donkey or mule along to wherever they needed to go. So I was like, future reference, if I ever buy a donkey or a mule, I'm doing that. That would make my life so much easier. But in the meantime, just make do. And like I said, goat kids are extremely smart, and they will figure it out very, very quickly and get the routine down very quickly. I will say there are so many benefits to getting goat kids out on the land at a young age, and in my opinion, the benefits far outweigh the risks. Not least of which is just the cuteness factor of these little kids just proudly galloping along with the herd, or, you know, starting to nibble on underbrush, or, you know, getting up with their little front feet on trees, you know, so they can get those leaves and branches. It's just very cute to watch. If you're rotating pastures, that's obviously going to really mitigate a lot of your parasite and coccidia issues, because they're not going to be working over the same ground again and again and again and again, and pooping and, you know, eating in that spot where they've pooped. So that's going to really help with just the overall health of your goat kids. And obviously too, they're going to start learning foraging at a very, very young age, just from watching their mom and the other herd members. And so even though it is a little extra work, it is a little extra bother, I do feel like it's very worthwhile and rewarding. And there's just so much that they can learn as kids, and they learn it so quickly and easily. And it's so much less work to train kids than it is to train an adult that's already kind of set in their ways and, you know, has picked up maybe habits that don't work well with your herd. It's easier to just start fresh with kids and teach them. It's a little more work at the outset, but I will say my kids that I have raised on the land are just so easy to work with now. They follow really well. They respect the fences fairly well. I have a couple that are a little bit rebellious about it, but they're really pretty good by and large. And they just really are a joy to work with, and they're just very easy, low maintenance goats. So thank you for watching this video. I hope the audio is okay, because there was a lot happening here at the beginning of the video, so hopefully it worked out all right for you. Next video in the Raising Kids series, I will be talking about milk sharing. So that will be geared specifically towards people who do dairy goats. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. I don't think I drank any of this coffee while I was filming, because I was kind of focused on my goats. Also, I don't know where my hat is. Somebody walked off with it. Oh, here he is. Oh, good. Whew.